So there are different ways that we can go about measuring this pension obligation. The first way listed is called the accumulated benefit obligation. And what this essentially is a estimate of the total retirement benefits that the employees have earned so far. But the most important part of this is that the formula that is used to calculate what those benefits are only uses existing compensation levels. So it's not looking at what the employee will make in their final year of retirement. It's basing the benefits, it's basing sort of the obligation or the liability, it's basing it off of what they make now. This is something that, yes, organizations do have to calculate it, but the only requirement for this is that it be disclosed in the footnotes. So the accumulated benefit obligation, the ABO, is where we estimate what is the liability that the company has related to a defined benefit plan, but based on the employee's current earnings, based on what they are earning in their salary right now. And again, this is something that's only going to be disclosed in the footnotes. The second piece, a vested benefit obligation. This is just simply sort of the percentage of the accumulated benefit obligation. So what we just discussed, the accumulated benefit obligation, what percentage of that are the employees entitled to receive regardless if they keep working for us or not? So again, I gave the example that sometimes there may be instances where the employees aren't allowed to, or I guess aren't vested in the defined benefit plan, into the pension plan, unless they've worked for the company for at least 10 years. Okay, so let's say that the situation is the individual has worked for the company for 10 years, so they are entitled to the pension plan, but the full amount of the pension will not be earned until that individual has reached 30 years of service. So what happens if that person leaves after 15 years, right? That's where this VBO comes into play, this vested benefit obligation. The individual, the employee, is entitled to receive some of that retirement benefit. Not all of it, because they didn't make it to the 30-year mark, but they did make it past the 10-year mark. So the idea here is that regardless of whether they're going to continue working for the full 30-year required time period, they are entitled to some, not all, but some of that retirement benefit. This again, this vested benefit obligation, again, is something that is based on existing compensation levels and is only required to be disclosed in the footnotes. So the first two, the accumulated benefit obligation and the vested benefit obligation, while these are important figures for the organization to disclose in the footnotes, this is not what we are going to continue talking about through this lecture. What we are going to continue talking about through this lecture is number 3, the projected benefit obligation. You will see it over and over again abbreviated in the Excel spreadsheets as PBO. The PBO is the estimate of what is the obligation, what is the liability that the company has to that employee as it relates to this defined benefit pension plan, but using estimated future compensation levels. And you can understand that the reason why we use this one is because this is the most accurate calculation of what the employee would actually be paid out, because we can estimate, okay, what is that future compensation amount going to be, because that is what their retirement benefit is going to be based on, that future compensation, that future salary that they're going to be making down the road. So this is what generally accepted accounting principles states as the method that we have to use to record the pension liability. This is what we are required to use in order to figure out what is the liability that needs to be accounted for on the balance sheet as it relates to a defined benefit plan. So throughout the remainder of the lecture, we are going to be focused on the PBO, the projected benefit obligation, which again is what is the liability that the company has related to this individual's retirement benefits. And we want to base the calculation that we're going to do, and we're about to walk through an example, we base that calculation on future compensation levels. So that's sort of where our focus is going to be on the projected benefit obligation. Okay, so let's jump right into a example, okay? So we're going to look at one employee in this example, and over the rest of the lecture, you're going to see that there are going to be some changes that we make. So we're going to change some of the components of the situation. But the baseline example that we're going to go through is related to this one employee. Her name is Jessica Farrow. She was hired by us. We are Global Communications at the beginning of 2010. And we offered her a defined benefit plan. And the retirement benefit formula is listed there on the slide. It's going to be 1.5% of service years. How long, again, service years being how long have they worked so far? That's what we mean by service years. How long have they worked so far? Okay, so 1.5% times service years times her final year's salary. So that's going to be an estimate that we're going to have to come up with. What do we think Jessica Farrow is going to make in her final year? Okay, so here is the details related to Jessica Farrow. She's expected to retire in 2049 after 40 total years of service. So remember, she has 40 total years of service. At the end of 2019, she has worked 10 years so far. Her retirement period is expected to be 20 years, okay? We are going to estimate that the discount rate or the interest rate to be used in these problems is 6%, and we are going to estimate that the future salary, right, the future final year salary, that future compensation amount is going to be $400,000 for Jessica Farrow. The question that we are trying to answer: what is the company's liability, the PBO, what is their liability with respect to Jessica Farrow? So the process that we are going to go through, first of all, I'll show you all of these details are already outlined in our Excel spreadsheet. So if I open up our Excel spreadsheet, it will show all of that detailed information included, okay? So all of the detailed information for Jessica Farrow has been included here. And what you're going to see is, again, there's obviously multiple tabs to this Excel spreadsheet, so we're going to walk our way through a few different types of scenarios. We're going to change things up a little bit as we go along, but this is the baseline example that we're going to go through. Again, she was hired in 2010. She is going to work until 2049, which would be 40 total years of service. We expect that she is actually going to be retired for 20 years. Her current salary is $100,000, but her future salary is going to be $400,000. She has already, right, because it's 2019, it is the end of 2019, and so from 2010 until the end of 2019, she has worked a total of 10 years, and our assumed interest rate in these problems is going to be 6%. So there's all of our detailed information. Now, each time we go through a problem like this, here is the process that we are going to do. Number one, we first want to calculate how much do we think her actual retirement benefit is going to be based on that formula that they gave us. So step number one is simply using this formula to come up with what is her retirement benefit going to be for those 20 years that she's retired. How much annual salary are we promising her? And again, we can do that using that formula. That's going to be step one. Step two is going to be, let's figure out, because remember, step one is a future cash flow. We are calculating how much she is going to be paid 20 years, right, for her retirement period. What's her annual salary going to be for those 20 years? Step two is we need to do a present value calculation to bring that amount, that 20 years worth of salary, we want to bring that to the date of her retirement. And then step three is going to be finding the present value of number two, right? Find the present value of number two today, right? And again, this kind of seems convoluted. The best place to start always with these pension problems is going to be with a timeline. So in Excel, I'm going to go ahead and draw a timeline that's going to outline these three steps. And notice, steps 1, 2, and 3, you can also see here in my Excel spreadsheet. Step 1 is going to be to calculate the retirement benefits. Step 2 is going to be to calculate the present value as of the retirement date. And step 3 is going to be to calculate the present value as of 2019. So let us start with a timeline, okay? So, in 2010, Jessica Farrow started working. She is expected to retire in 2049. So that is the 40 total years of service. 40 years, right? That's the whole period of time that she's planning on working for our company, right? Today, right, the date that we're talking about right now is 2019. So this is the date that we are essentially going to need to report a liability for Jessica Farrow's retirement benefits. What we are trying to do is come up with what is the liability that needs to be reported. What is the PBO, the liability that needs to be reported on that day, okay? So the last piece of this is how long is Jessica Farrow actually going to be retired? So if this is Jessica Farrow's retirement date, 2049, we said that she is going to be retired for 20 years. That is our timeline. That is what we are working with in terms of the details of this example, okay? Now, step 1 is always going to be to figure out what are we actually promising to pay her when she is retired. So if we look at our timeline, where we are first in step 1 is right out here, her retirement period. Every year for 20 years, she's going to get a retirement benefit. We need to know in step 1 what that retirement benefit actually is. So we can use the formula that they give us. The pension formula that they give us is to take her annual salary in retirement years, that's the $400,000 that was given to us in the problem, times her number of service years. How many years has she worked so far? If we look right here, right, we know that she has worked 10 years total. That's how long she's worked so far. So again, that's given to us in the problem. Current years of service, 10. And then the pension percentage that they give us is just 1.5%. So if we take her future salary times her current service years times the 1.5%, what we are saying is that as of today, as of 2019, that she has worked for 10 years, we are saying that this annuity, the amount that she is going to be paid every single year, is $60,000. That's step 1. Step 1 is always to calculate what is that retirement benefit going to be once she actually retires. How much are we promising to pay her every year in that retirement? $60,000. Now, step 2 is to say, okay, that's all fine and good. Remember, at the end of the day, where we want to get back to is way back here, 2019. Right now, we're way out here on our timeline. So what we have to do is a calculation that's going to take these annuity payments, 20 years worth of annuity payments, and bring them back to this retirement date. That's going to be step 2. Let's do a calculation, a present value calculation. And this is where what we went through in chapters 14 and 15 is going to come in handy. We're simply going to use the equals PV formula like we did with bonds, like we did with leases. So again, what we're trying to figure out is what is the present value of those annuity payments, of those $60,000 annual salary payments for the 20-year period that she's going to get them. What's the present value of those? So equals PV. If I click on the little link, it says, what's my rate? Given to us in the problem, 6%. My number of periods, how long are we promising to pay her that, or how long are we estimating, how long are we estimating that she is going to get that $60,000 annual payment? 20 years, right? That was our retirement period. What is that payment amount? That payment amount, and I'm going to put it as a negative, right? Because this is a cash outflow to our company. The cash outflow is going to be negative $60,000. There is no future value because we're talking about, I don't know why that's not letting me click. There is no future value, 0, because we're not talking about a lump sum amount in the future. We're talking about a periodic payment. And then the type in these cases is always going to be 0. So again, equals PV. My rate is 6%. My number of periods is 20 years. That's how long that we are expecting for her to be retired. My payment amount is $60,000. My future value is 0. My type is 0. So what we just calculated is the amount that this payment is worth on this retirement period. So we did a present value calculation and we came up with $688,195. What we're saying here is that the present value as of the retirement date, right? Remember, as of 2049, the present value of that annuity is going to be $688,195. Now again, we have to remind ourselves, we are trying to get all the way back here to 2019. We're not there yet. That's why we need step 3. Step 3 is going to take that lump sum $688,000 and we're going to bring that back to 2019. That's the final step to this. So again, we're going to use a present value formula equals PV, but now what we're doing is saying, okay, there is a 30-year period. If we worked for 10 years, but there was a total service life of 40 years, then this amount here is 30 years. 30 years is the time gap that we have now. We need to bring this $688,195, we need to bring it back 30 years. We're going to do that with another equals PV formula. Equals PV. My rate is still 6%. My number of periods now is going to be 30. My payment amount, I don't have a payment amount in this case. What I do have is a future value. I have this future value, $688,000, and again, I'm going to make it negative because this represents an outflow to my organization. It's a negative amount to my organization. $688,195, that is my future value. And again, my type is 0. If I do that calculation, I come up with $119,821. At step 3, we have now figured out the answer to that question. If I look back on my PowerPoint, the answer to the question, what is the company's projected benefit obligation with respect to Jessica Farrow? After I made a timeline, followed my 3 steps, I came up with $119,821. That $119,000 is the amount that would have to be reported on the balance sheet for Jessica Farrow's retirement benefits. Our company, right, we are Global Communications, and we owe Jessica $119,821 worth of retirement benefits. We did that all by this 3-step process. So again, if we think about this in terms of sort of just big picture what we're talking about. What we're trying to figure out is at the end of the day, what is the liability that we have related to these individuals and the retirement benefits that we're promising them. Because those retirement benefits are so far out into the future, we have to do these present value calculations to bring them to today. 2019, we need to know. We're not worried that we're, it's not relevant that we're going to pay her the $60,000 in those 20 years. We need to know how much is that worth today. At the end of 2019, how much is that worth today? And that's where this 3-step process comes into play. So in the upcoming videos, what I will do is, again, alter these scenarios a little bit. We'll change things up a little bit so that we can see really in a variety of different situations what's going to happen to this pension liability, to this PBO over time as different circumstances or assumptions change. We're going to walk through a lot of those kinds of changes in the future upcoming videos.